A frantic 911 call comes in. A woman claims she found her husband dead on the bathroom floor. Her story is that he slipped, hit his head on the toilet, and died before she could even call for help. Looking at this chart comparing fatal home accidents by room, the bathroom far outpaces the kitchen, stairs, or garage. It is a remarkably dangerous environment. That high fatality rate makes sense when you look at the physical geometry of a standard bathroom. You have tight, confined spaces surrounded by completely unyielding materials: tile, porcelain, cast iron. A slip here leaves zero room for error. Because these accidents happen so frequently, the bathroom offers excellent cover for a killer. A violent death in a small, tiled room looks exactly like an everyday domestic tragedy. For the investigators arriving on the scene, there are no eyewitnesses. There are no security cameras inside a private bathroom. The only narrative they have to work with is the surviving wife's account of events. The forensic team has to solve a physics problem. They need to figure out if the force that killed this man was the chaotic, random kinetic energy of an accidental fall or the calculated, intentional force of a human being swinging a weapon. While a suspect can easily manipulate a timeline or a story, they cannot manipulate a corpse. The victim's body acts as a permanent, incorruptible physical data log that records the exact mechanics of their final moments. According to the wife's timeline, her husband stepped onto a wet tile, lost his footing, and slipped straight backward. His head then struck the edge of the porcelain fixture, resulting in an instant fatal blow. We can test that story against the strict biomechanics of a backward fall. When a person slips backward, their center of mass instantly drops, and gravity pulls their body down in a highly specific, mathematically predictable arc. During that drop, the brain triggers an involuntary survival mechanism known as the Fuchs reflex, short for fall on outstretched hand. The person will instinctively shoot their arms backward to break the fall, placing all the stress on the wrists and lower palms. If those hands fail to stop the descent, the head follows the arc down. That produces a single concentrated area of blunt force trauma right on the occipital bone, at the very back of the skull. Aside from that singular head strike, and perhaps a fractured wrist from the Fuchs reflex, a body in freefall won't hit much else. You expect a distinct lack of secondary injuries. Gravity and basic human reflexes work together to ensure that a real accidental fall leaves a highly constrained set of marks. The physics write a very specific recipe for trauma. But when the forensic pathologist examined the husband's autopsy report, the empirical data told a completely different story. This 3D topographical map of the victim's skull reveals the first major anomaly. Instead of one impact zone at the back of the head, we see severe blunt force fractures scattered across the top, the sides, and the front of the skull. It is mathematically impossible to produce multiple impact planes from a single fall against a stationary object. You cannot hit the top, side, and front of your head all at once by slipping backward onto a toilet. Then there is the secondary anomaly. The pathologist found deep contusions and microfractures, but they weren't on the palms or the wrists. They were located specifically on the outer forearms and the backs of the hands. Those are not from bracing for a fall. When a person raises their arms to shield their face and torso from incoming blows, the backs of the arms take the hits. These are classical defensive wounds. Those scattered skull fractures, combined with active defensive posturing, physically prove a dynamic, moving attacker was present in that bathroom. The accident alibi completely collapses. Using the injury data, pathologists can build a chronological timeline of the attack that completely overrides the wife's spoken alibi. The evidence lays out the true sequence of events. The husband took an unexpected initial strike to the head. He raised his arms in a desperate defensive struggle and then endured a rapid succession of fatal blows. Furthermore, the distinct shape of the impact wounds on the skull indicated a weapon with a specific, rigid geometry. That geometry entirely mismatched the soft curves and flat edges of the bathroom's built-in fixtures. The wife's attempt to stage the scene failed because she introduced a massive amount of chaotic kinetic energy into the room. The physical geometry of a bathroom simply cannot account for that level of scattered violence. When investigators layered the timeline of her story over the rigid, indisputable biomechanical evidence, the math didn't add up. The discrepancies led directly to her arrest. Cases like this show why trying to stage a fatal domestic accident is an exercise in futility. Modern pathology operates on hard math, and human tissue records forces with exact precision. A killer can craft the perfect alibi and attempt to rewrite reality with a tragic story, but the unforgiving laws of physics ensure the truth remains permanently etched into the physical evidence.